How I hate it. I'd much rather play. I'd take a vacation, fly off for a rest. If I could find someone to sit on my nest. If I could find someone, I'd fly away free.
Then Horton the elephant passed by her tree.
Hello. Oh, you've nothing to do and I do need a rest. Would you like to sit on the egg in my nest?
Why, of all silly things, I haven't feathers and I haven't wings. Me on your nest, why, it doesn't make sense. Your egg is so small, man, I'm so immense.
Tut-tut, I know you're not small, but I'm sure you can do it. No trouble at all. Just sit on it softly. You're gentle and kind. Come be a good fellow. I know you won't mind.
I can.
Please! I won't be long, sir. I give you my word. I'll hurry right back. Well, I'll never be missed.
Very well. Since you insist, you want the vacation, go fly off and take it. I'll sit on your egg and I'll try not to break it. I'll stay and be faithful, I mean what I say.
Toodaloo! Shing, this is not a story of great courage.
But then it depends on how you define great courage.
This is not a story of love or adventure.
But once again, it depends on how you define love and adventure.
Just as well, this is a story that our society can stand to listen to because it vividly defines faithfulness and shows us just how far being faithful can take you, literally. And sometimes it takes the simplest stories
To drive home with profound truth.
So sit back and enjoy our interpretation of Horton Hatches the Egg by Dr. Seuss.
Let's see. The first thing to do is to prop up this tree. To make it much stronger. That has to be done before I get on it. I must make time.
Carefully, tenderly, gently he crept up the trunk to the nest where the little egg slept.
Now that's that.
And he sat, and he sat, and he sat, and he sat. Oh! And he sat all that day and he kept the egg warm. And he sat all that night through a terrible storm. It poured and it lightened. It thundered. It rumbled.
This isn't much fun. I wish he'd come back, 'cause I'm cold and I'm wet. I hope that Maisie bird doesn't forget.
But Maisie, by this time, was far beyond reach, enjoying the sunshine way off the cottage, and having such fun, such a wonderful rest, decided,
I'll never go back to my nest. So Horton kept sitting there day after day, and soon it was autumn. The leaves blew away, and then came the winter, the snow and the sleet, and the icicles hung from his trunk to his feet. But Horton kept sitting, and he said, with a sneeze,
Achoo! I'll stay on this egg and I won't let it freeze. I meant what I said and I said what I meant. Hope it is faithful 100%.
So poor Horton sat there the whole winter through. And then came the springtime, with troubles anew. His friends gathered round and they shouted with glee. Look! Horton the elephant's up in a tree! How absurd! Horton the elephant thinks he's a bird! They laughed, then they laughed. Then they all ran away. And Horton was lonely. He wanted to play, but he sat on that egg and continued to say,
I meant what I said. I said what I meant. No, but it's faithful 100%. No matter what happens, I must be tended.
But poor Horton's troubles were far, far from ended. For while Horton sat there, so faithful, so kind, 3 hunters came sneaking up, softly behind. He heard the men's footsteps. He turned with a start. 3 rifles were aiming right straight at his heart. Did he run? He did not. Horton stayed on that nest. He held his head high and he threw out his chest. And he looked at the hunters as much as to say,
Shut up you must, but I won't run away. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant is faithful 100%.
but the men didn't shoot. Much to Horton's surprise, they dropped their 3 guns, and they stared with wide eyes. Look, can such a thing be?
Elephant on top of a tree.
It's strange.
It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
It's new.
Don't shoot him, we'll catch him.
That's just what we'll do.
Let's take him alive.
He's terribly funny.
We'll sail him back home to a circus for money. And the next thing he knew, they built a big wagon with ropes on the front for the Polish to drag on. They dug up his tree and they put it inside. With Horton so sad, he practically cried. And off they all went, with Horton unhappy, 100%. Up out of the jungle,
Up into the sky,
up over the mountains, 10,000 feet high. Then down the mountains and down to the sea, went the cart with the elephant, egg, nest, and tree. Then out of the wagon and onto a ship, out over the ocean, and oh, what a trip! Rolling and tossing and splashed with the spray. And Horton said day after day after day,
I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. But oh, my seasick 100%.
after bobbing around for 2 weeks like a cork, they landed at last in the town of New York.
and down with a lurch went Horton the elephant still on his perch, tied to a board that could just scarcely hold him.
And then the men sold him. Sold to a circus. Then week after week, they showed him to people at 10 cents a peek. They took him to Boston,
To Kalamazoo,
Chicago,
Weehawken,
and Washington too.
to Dayton, Ohio,
St. Paul, Minnesota,
to Wichita, Kansas,
to Drake, North Dakota. And everywhere, thousands of folks flocked to see and laugh at the elephant up in a tree. Poor Horton grew sadder the farther he went. But he said as he sat in that hot, noisy tent,
I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant is faithful 100%.
then one day,
the circus show happened to reach a town way down south, not so far from Palm Beach, and flying along up high in the sky, who, of all people, should chance to fly by but that old good-for-nothing bird, Runaway Maisie, still on vacation and still just as lazy. And behind the tents and the flags just below, she sang out,
what fun! Welcome to the show.
and she swooped from the clouds to an open tent door.
Good gracious! I've seen you before! Poor Horton looked up with a face white as chalk. He started to speak, but before he could talk, there rang out the noisiest, ear-splitting squeaks from the egg he'd sat on for 51 weeks. A thumping, a bumping, a wildlife scratching.
My egg! Why, yeah, Daddy.
But it's mine! It's my egg! You stole it from me! Get out of my nest and get out of my tree! Poor Horton backed down with a sad, heavy heart. But at that very instant, the egg burst apart.
And out of the pieces of red and white shell,
From the egg he had sat on so long and so well, Horton the elephant saw something whiz. It had ears and a tail and a trunk just like his. And the people came shouting, "What's this all about?" And they looked and they stared with their eyes popping out. Then they cheered and they cheered and they cheered more and more. They'd never seen anything like it before. My goodness.
my gracious,
My word.
It's something brand new. It's an elephant bird. And it should be.
it should be.
It should be that way.
It's because Horton was faithful.
He sat
And he sat,
he meant what he said,
and he said what he meant.
and they sent him home happy. 100%.